Welcome to another episode of our Personal Empowerment Premium Audio Series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. And our program today is really about facing one of the most challenging issues we have in our lives. Today we're going to talk about dealing with difficult people. Now, there are, of course, a lot of different kinds of difficult people, but Michael and I had a conversation about this, and we decided that we're going to talk about the big three kinds of difficult people, really prevalent in our world, dealing with angry, hostile people, dealing with pessimistic, negative people, and dealing with sad, depressed people. It's really, really challenging, each one of those different kinds of people, but there are ways of dealing with each of those different kinds of people so that you can still have a life that is full of joy and wonder.
Emotional feelings are very contagious. You know, in psychology, it's often called amenability or suggestibility. In the internet language, it's viral, and that's sort of what I'm talking about by contagious. If somebody's angry, you know, especially if any of that is directed at you, that makes you angry or tends to turn your anxiety into your own level of defensiveness, right? Same thing with pessimism and sadness. These are very powerful emotions, and that I think of all the different feelings, the rainbows of various feelings, good and bad, that we can have. These are three real good examples of the way other people are affected by the way you feel.
Yeah, so powerfully true. So let's talk about each of these three different types of people we deal with in our lives and what we can do to diffuse the intensity of their emotions, to not get wrapped up and caught up into a spiral of those emotions, because that's really, you know, certainly one of the great dangers we face. Talk about dealing with angry and hostile kind of people. You know, what they're looking for is a battle. I mean, they're angry. They're wanting to fight. So just like when you're facing an angry animal, like an angry dog, the worst thing to do is be afraid. Will show fear, and the dog will attack. But stay unafraid, stay feeling safe and peaceful, and you diffuse the dog's anger. Well, you'll find the same is true with angry people and hostile people. If you can stay and at least appear to be not afraid, you know, stand your ground, don't back off, make eye contact in a non-hostile way, appear to be safe, appear to feel calm and collected and cool, and what they'll find is their anger either diffuses or you're no fun to play with, you're no fun to yell at, I'll go find somebody else that'll yell back at me. They're looking for engagement. And if you're not engaging in the game they want to play, then what often happens is they calm down or back off and go find somebody else.
There is a bias in society. This is true for men and for women, for old people and young people, I think, across all ethnicities. And even depending on how much education you may have in the field of psychology, I think nevertheless, everybody has this bias. It's like a built-in, not even conscious, on some subconscious level, that if there is anger in the room or anger present in another person, it's always going to end up being directed at you. In other words, if somebody is angry and you're in the room, you're going to feel like they're angry at you, and they're going to tend to direct that anger at you, even if you both know it has nothing to do with you. It's like, hey, why are you angry at me? It's called misplaced or misdirected anger. And it happens all the time. You quiz somebody, well, what are you so upset about? Why are you so angry? Usually it has very little to do with what's happening now. It's usually about something that happened in the past and they no longer have access to. It's downstream. It's gone, right? It's the spilt milk we're crying over. And then we turn for what? Sympathy, I think. Understanding. But often it leads to an argument because both people on an unconscious level feel anger's got to be directed at somebody. Other feelings are not like that. You know, you can be in the room with somebody who's sad and depressed, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, without feeling like they're sad at you or they're depressed about you. But there's something about that anger, man. And I've said to many clients and students over the years, just because you're angry and there's somebody else in the room doesn't mean you're angry at them.
But as you said, it certainly does feel that way. You can walk into a room after that argument is over and still feel the tension sometimes that remains in the room. Yeah, anger is a directed emotion. It's not a self-contained thing. It goes out. It goes out like in every direction around it. And so what's this anger all about? How can you stand safe? How can you stand without fear in the face of anger? Well, part of it comes from understanding. Fear comes from not understanding, and feeling safe comes from understanding what the anger is about. First of all, as Michael was alluding to, it's very rarely about what it looks like it's about. It's not about what's going on now. It's about something in the past, and it's always about something that hurt. Anger's always about something that hurt. You don't get angry at something that feels good. You get angry at something that hurts. There's pain. Somewhere involved, there's pain. And so that's what you can feel safe about, is to know that this person is being hostile, is being angry at something. It just feels like it's at you because you're there, but it's really they're hurting. And when you can shift your consciousness from they're just being mean, they're just being a bad, terrible person, to the that they're suffering, they're actually in pain, they're hurting, then it's a whole lot easier to feel safe with a hurting person than with a person who's about to attack, kind of thing. So understand, no matter how bad it looks, no matter how hostile they seem, no matter, I mean, of course, be careful in terms of violence, but short of violence, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you, as long as you stay in the place of understanding that they're not trying to hurt you. They're just crying out in their pain.
Now let's take that one more step. If all anger is supported by and born from some deeper emotional hurt, what is the hurt supported by, rooted in, or born of? At the most basic level, well, it's fear by any name.
Yeah, it's fear. At the core of it all is fear.
Anxiety, stress, apprehension, worry, doubt, nervousness. Yeah, we have lots of names for fear, but if you can see this hierarchy, that at the top, this explosive anger that's so reflexive and out of control is really born of hurt that never really got resolved or healed or paid attention to, never was really understood. And that hurt is supported by fear, which is always confusion and a feeling that you may be in danger, but it's really not danger. Fear is about things unknown. I love that Emerson line about knowledge is the antidote to fear. He didn't say safety is the antidote, or guns, or security like money in the bank, or national security, or nuclear weapons, or, he said knowledge, because he recognized, as few people do, frankly, that fear is really not about danger. It's about confusion. I mean, even if the danger is clear and present, your fear is a function of what you do not know about the danger itself. And usually it's not a factor at all. It's just a general sense of not knowing that supports fear, that allows the hurt to continue, even if you had nothing to do with causing it. There's some sort of buy-in that makes that fear hurt as a result of something someone said or did or should have said or should have done. And that becomes, when unattended, anger. There's your hierarchy. There's your little pillar. Fear leads to hurt, leads to anger. So when you feel the anger, you've got to deconstruct it.
Yeah, and underneath you have to find the hurt. And sometimes you have to even go deeper and find the fear. So when someone is angry, what you need to do is feel unafraid. That's the most important thing. Allow them to express their anger in a nonviolent way, however they need to. But if you get afraid, then you start getting agitated, and what's going to happen is you're going to get defensive and feel like you're being attacked, and then it doubles back out. So if you're dealing with difficult people that are angry, you stay feeling safe. Now, what if you are a difficult person? That is, what if you're the angry person? What do you do about that? And as Michael said, that's where the deconstructing can really be powerful, because you can step back and go, wait a minute, I'm being hostile here, I'm being angry here, and really, is this a problem to be solved or a hurt to be healed? And usually you'll find in the middle of the anger, right now at least, there's a hurt that needs to be healed. I mean, the problem may be, but the problem was there 20 minutes ago and it'll be there 2 hours from now, but I wasn't angry 20 minutes ago and I wasn't angry 2 hours from now. Why am I angry right now? Because something's hurting right now. The problem may be a lifelong, I don't have enough money problem, or I'm in the wrong career problem, or my relationship's falling. It could be a problem that's often there or always there, but why am I angry right now? Because there's this part of me that's wounded, that's being poked at. It's hurting right now. So if I'm feeling angry, then I can take that step back. As soon as I notice the defensiveness coming up, I can take that step back, ask for a timeout, wait a second here, and say, what's hurting me? If there's something in me that's getting so riled up about this, what's the burr in my saddle? What's the thorn in my shoe that's making me hurt so much? Stepping back and doing that, and all of a sudden this anger can turn into one of the most positive emotional growth experiences of your life.
This program's called Dealing with Difficult People, but the order is imperative. It's basic emotional intelligence to realize that you can never do anything for another person that you're unable to do for yourself. So that's really where it starts, to be aware of and manage your own anger and hurt and anxiety. Then, in turn, helps you to do better with empathy or social awareness. In other words, deal with difficult people when they're angry. Get that order down. First, you got to know what you're talking about. You've got to, a lot of people like to work it backwards because it seems less risky to fix other people and overlook your own compliance in things. It's really imperative that we start in the center with yourself and then give away what you've developed.
Yeah, it doesn't look good when the tow truck breaks down. You really should have your stuff working first. So dealing with angry people, stay safe. Now, there's another kind of person that's even more prevalent in our world, I think, and that's the majority of people, as far as I can see, who are, let's say, pessimistic or negative people. I mean, not always, but mostly they would rather prepare for the worst. They'd rather worry about what could go wrong. They'd rather play victim and talk about how terrible everything is than risk the hope that things might get better, that risk the fear of disappointment if they don't work out the way they hope they're going to work out. So there's so many difficult people to deal with because they don't buy into your enthusiasm. They don't agree with your passion. They don't support your behavior. They just tell you how it'll never work. It didn't work before. It won't work again. And it's such a drain. It's such an emotional drain sometimes dealing with people like this. And they'll keep going. They'll just keep going. They'll just keep finding more and more arguments for why it won't work and why you're stupid for even trying it. So what do you do with people like that? Well, understand, what they're enjoying is being right. That's their favorite thing. In fact, it's about the only pleasure they get in life, pessimists. They have a terrible time on the way to finding out that they're right. Optimists have a wonderful time on the way to finding out if they're right, but pessimists have a terrible time on the way to finding out they're right. The only moment of pleasure is the I told you so moment. So they live for that I'd love to be right feeling. So what you need to do is give them that. That is, find something to agree with. You don't have to agree with their attitude, but whatever they're saying, somewhere in there's got to be something that, makes sense, that is, not totally off the wall. Find something to agree with. And once you can agree with them, it diffuses all the, wait a minute, we're not arguing anymore. We're not fighting anymore. You're on my side. I can't, you're no fun. It's it's like being safe with a person that's angry. You're not engaging me. You're not fun. Feeling like you're on the same side of the table with the pessimist rather than across the table arguing changes everything. All of a sudden, you're on their side, you're agreeing, you're seeing what they're having to say, you're not fighting them, and you're not trying to overcome their negativity with your positivity, you're agreeing with something that they're negative about. It changes everything in terms of the way they're looking at it.
Acknowledgement is a very powerful tool in social awareness and relationship management. Big parts of what now is called emotional intelligence at work and at home and pretty much every place in your life. Again, it has to have some self-awareness and some self-management if you're going to be able to empathize. And then, as Steve said, acknowledge something about what your, quote, opponent, unquote, is saying. I mean, first of all, recognize it's really easy to be a pessimist. It's very, very easy to invest emotionally, as Steve said, in needing to be right. It's much more difficult to commit instead to understanding and to being open-minded. But if a person has a driving need to be right, they're much more likely to be pessimistic. And, you never have to be reasonable if you're a pessimist. Nobody ever says, why do you believe that? It's just like this general malaise in the society that we're so open to the idea of things failing or falling apart or you're never going to get there, when the optimist is somebody that goes through all the same frustrations, but they see them as opportunities to learn and get better and better. So it's all attitude. It's not events, right? The pessimist and the optimist and the person in the middle somewhere, they're all experiencing similar events and circumstances in their lives. But what's the attitude? What's the mindset? And when you understand how literally creative the mind is, you can't afford to be a pessimist. You have to be realistic, which to me is an optimist that looks at the negative every once in a while, that considers the negative. You'd be a fool not to. I remember asking Timothy Leary once in an interview I did with him, one of many actually, got to know Tim quite well. And he was always entertaining, if nothing else. And I said to him one day, "Are you an optimist?" And he looked at me like I was from Mars or something, like, what's wrong with you? And after a long pause, he said, well, of course, what choice do I have? And I guess that's the way I feel about it. You have to be an optimist unless you're just knocked into a poor mental health practice of needing to be right and wanting to be the spoiler, and you're the wet blanket. And, of course, you call yourself the reasonable one, but isn't it easy to be the person that always shatters people's dreams? It brings everybody back to, quote, reality and the cold, hard truth. And it'll never happen. Why? Well, it never has. The optimist often has to explain why they feel that way. Something about being pessimistic, nobody ever expects you to explain your rationale.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it? Think about it. I mean, to the pessimist, the reason that getting on the same side as the pessimist diffuses their energy is because to the pessimist, they see pessimism as being logical and optimism as being illogical. Logically, right, for the pessimist, it makes sense to prepare for the worst, because if that happens, then I'm prepared for it, and who in the world needs to prepare for the best? I mean, if that happens, anybody can handle that. So it's logical, from the pessimist's point of view, to look at all the things that could go wrong, and it's illogical to look at what could go right, because anybody can handle that. What the pessimist doesn't get, part of the equation that's missing for them, is that by imagining what could go wrong, they're creating what could go wrong, or at least moving toward creating that. So when the pessimist is putting out their logical argument why it's going to fail, and you, as an optimist, agree with something they said, well, all of a sudden you're not illogical anymore. All of a sudden you're being logical, with them. And they don't want to fight a logical person. They want to fight an illogical person. That's where their power is to prove to you that you're being illogical. So there's great power, as Michael said, in agreement, in endorsement, in getting on the same side of the table with the pessimistic person. So when you're dealing with pessimistic people, essentially, instead of fighting them, find something in their argument that you can agree with to diffuse the energy. Now, if you are the pessimistic person, if you are the problem or difficult person that other people are dealing with, take a look at the nature of what pessimism, just as we said, the nature of being angry underneath is hurt, and underneath that is fear. Well, the nature of pessimism is a fear of disappointment. That's the core fear that pessimists live with, this fear of disappointment. If I don't get my hopes up too high, then I can't be hurt. If I do get my hopes up too high, then I'm risking a potential being hurt really bad. See, so there's this logical reason to not get my hopes up high, to prevent myself from feeling the pain of disappointment. Disappointment is so highly overestimated in their minds that see it as this horrible, terrible thing. So do understand that people who are pessimistic are operating under a handicap. They think disappointment is a terrible thing. They think it's unbearable and that it's not worth risking. And you have to feel a little sorry for people that are that overwhelmed, that afraid of something that is really not that big a deal. Pessimism is such a huge response to such a small thing called disappointment. disappointment really is a nothing thing, because the truth is we don't want to hold tightly to the goals or the dreams or the visions. We want to hold loosely to them, because the universe might provide us with something even better, or something that on the surface doesn't look as good but has the lessons that we need to learn. So it's not about actually getting that thing you're wanting. It's about moving in that direction, because the journey toward what you want the most is your greatest journey. So understanding that makes it easier to live, I think, with people who are pessimistic, knowing that really what it is a really strong fear they have of disappointment.
Okay, so dealing with angry people, you're going to refuse to be afraid. Keep it in neutral, right? Engage, but you don't go forward, you don't go backward, you don't move on them, you don't back off in the face of their anger. You just sort of stay neutral as if you're some objective outside observer. You just don't take the hit, right? Refuse to be afraid. I think that's a big piece of what love your enemy means. I think it means respect the enemy and try to understand the enemy, but don't let them frighten you. Refuse to embody the fear, because it'll bring up your old hurt, and then you'll get angry and defensive too. See? You get caught up in it. And now we're talking about dealing with that second kind of really difficult person, the pessimist. And boy, aren't they arrogant and proud of the fact that they're right so much of the time, shattering dreams and bringing people down to their level. And there's a third person we want to talk about today, though this list could go on. And that's the person that's depressed or bummed out or sad. Now, all of us get the blues from time to time. This is a feeling that has its own color, right? I don't know any other color with a feeling, but the blues, we know what that means.
Well, jealousy's green. And
is it?
Fear is yellow. I mean,
anger's red, I suppose.
I mean, they've given colors to emotions. But
you know, that's interesting that you'd say that, because I hadn't really thought of that before. But maybe it's just because I relate to the blues on a couple of levels.
Yeah, there you go.
As a color, as a kind of music. You know, singing the blues is a cure for the blues. I don't know if you know that or not, but it's sort of an odd thing. Like when you turn and face what hurts, you understand it, and it's much easier to release. If you want to hear a really nice description of that, check our program from this past week, because Steve did a real nice essay on that, I think, about, you know, letting go is moving toward and holding on is trying to move away from. It's so counterintuitive, but once you get that square in your head, you get that straightened out. That's really, really powerful stuff. So what about the person that is routinely negative, however, in this sense? They're depressed, they're sad. It's very closely related to pessimism, except that it feels like a burden or a weight that they have to carry. Depression can be so bad that you can't get out of bed. Some people literally cannot get out of bed. They just want to sleep and sleep and sleep. And I think one of the most difficult things about chronic depression, that depression that lasts more than 2 or 3 days, or that reoccurs a lot, is the feeling that seems to come with it, or maybe it's a conclusion that somehow we make in the wake of the feeling that this will never end. I think that's true with a lot of feelings. They feel tenacious, like they're holding on to you, when, as we discussed last week, you're holding on to them, actually. But nevertheless, I think more than any other feeling, depression is just, no, man, I'm not going away. You've got me forever. And you can tell yourself, well, that's not true. I've been depressed before, and it always went away. Doesn't seem to matter, you know. Something in the mind says, yeah, but not this time. I'm here to stay. And you just spiral down. That feeds the depression and the anxiety. Remember, fear, anxiety, stress is always at the root of this. Everything that hurts is rooted in something you don't understand about yourself. So the antidote to a hurt emotional feeling, a so-called negative emotion, is to understand it.
So there's something really different, though, about people who are sad, depressed, versus people who are angry or hostile or what we call negative or pessimistic, in that angry people and pessimistic people, they've got a lot of energy putting out at you, whereas sad, depressed people, they don't feel like they have any energy at all. It feels like it's all self-contained. They're not trying to do anything to you or at you or make you different. They're just leave me alone. You can't help me. Nobody can help me. There's nothing anybody can do for me. And as long as they stay inside their own thought feeling spiral, which is heading downward, it's likely to continue heading downward. The way that you deal, which is why really, this is the hardest one to get out of on your own. Like you can change yourself from being a pessimist to being a cautious optimist. That's doable. You can change yourself from being a hostile, angry person to a person who understands what hurts and not behave that way. But to get yourself out of depression, to get yourself out of sadness on your own is really very, very difficult. And that's why this is one of the great positive challenges dealing with difficult people, is that here is a place where if you know people who are sad or depressed or lonely, you can be of help. You can definitely be of great service. The secret to getting people out of their sadness, and let's distinguish the difference. Michael was talking about depression being an ongoing, severe, long-lasting, or consistently reoccurring thing. That's relatively rare. I mean, there are, percentage of people, but sadness is something everybody has, and you can be stuck in sadness for a little while, like, when somebody passes away or when something bad happens, it's a normal reaction. But when people are sort of stuck in that sadness, the most important thing to do to get them out of their own thought-feeling negative cycle that's taking them down is to get them to help somebody else. That's really the core piece, to get them out of their own stuff, get them to do something nice for somebody else, and all of a sudden that starts to break the cycle. Now, what's cool is it takes them out of their sadness. Now, as soon as that event of helping that other person's over, they may go back into their sadness, but they have to start all over again. They don't go right back down, way down where they were. They have to start that spiral again, and they're like way up here now. Not way, way up here, but compared to where they were, they're sort of way up here now. And so anytime you can bring them out of their own negative thought-feeling spiral to think positive, to do something good, to feel rewarded for a positive behavior or action, you really break that cycle for them, and they have to start all over again.
This is so important, and I think so powerful, that it speaks to a meaning and purpose in life. In other words, if helping other people, doing something nice, kind, considerate, generous, even being tolerant of people that sort of rub you the wrong way from time to time, just not saying anything, putting up with it, if that can lift you out of sadness, even depression, then it suggests that the failure to behave in that way may have been a contributing factor in the first place. It suggests, I'd say further, that this is why you're here. This is a big part of what you're for. I think to understand yourself, to grow, to explore your potential would be a real good meaning and purpose in life, or let's call it a purpose, and the meaning is a little more personal, how you go about doing that. But another big piece of it, meaning and purpose of life, has got to be helping other people. If you say service to other people, people think it sounds like work. I'm not talking about even necessarily going out of your way to be kind to somebody, right? To step on the brake instead of the accelerator if somebody cuts you off in traffic, and remind yourself it's not very likely they did that on purpose. It was probably an accident. That is, they didn't really know what they did, and consider how many times you may have done that to other people, honestly, not knowing that you were really being perceived as an aggressive driver when in fact you weren't. And so it's an attitude that you take with you. And isn't it likely we could avoid a lot of our depression in this way? Not all of it. As Steve said, there's many causes for depression. I mean, a thyroid condition can bring on a symptom that models emotional depression. And there's even a genetic predisposition to depression, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about typical, routine, emotional depression. And check it out. If helping other people, being kind, being generous, giving of yourself, loving in all the different qualities of love, and developing your relationships lifts you out of sadness, well, perhaps it speaks directly to the kind of life that all of us should be leading. From a non-religious but nevertheless spiritual point of view, the idea that we all come from a single source into these separate forms in a world of separated things, and then somehow, as the wheel spins, we have to get back to that oneness. How do you do that? But through relationships, through marriage, through loving your children, through learning to forgive people, reaching out, connecting with people. I think that's an integral part of life, and it certainly will heal depression. It'll make it a lot easier to manage. It may not be the cure or the panacea, because it's likely there could be other factors, but this is a very important piece, I think.
So when you run across people in your life who are going through some deep sadness and they don't seem to be able to get out of it, I mean, again, we all go through it, but they seem stuck in it, then at least a temporary respite for them is to get out of their own head and move into somebody else's space, move into being of service or being of help to other people. So if you know people who are sad in your life, go help them help other people. If you're the one that's sad, well, maybe you have it within you to just go help other people, or if not, maybe something you could do instead is to ask for help from a dear loved one and ask them to help you find a way that you could help other people. You don't have to do this alone. When you're sad, sometimes it's really hard to do things alone. It's hard to get the energy. But with somebody to support you, to mentor you, to coach you through it, ask for a favor. I need to get out of my own head and go help somebody else, but I don't know how to do that. Could you help me figure out a way to do that? Together we'll figure out a way. That process alone takes you out of your own problems and into feeling different and feeling better. And again, it's such a vicious cycle of thoughts and feelings, negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative thoughts, negative feelings, that you need to break that cycle. You need to think about something positive, like how can I help other people? How can I be of service? So in recap, when we're dealing with angry and hostile people, it's stay safe. When we're dealing with defensive, negative, pessimistic people, it's get on their side. Don't fight them. Find something to agree with. And we're dealing with sad and depressed people, it's help them get out of their own troubles and help someone else.
So let's install this. Let's do our narrow awake exercise, go to paradise, so to speak, the alpha brainwave level, with a relaxation exercise, feeling safe that lowers brain waves and brings online all the higher brain functions. Now learning and understanding is accelerated. So close your eyes, find a comfortable position and close your eyes. You can sit back if you'd like and allow the back of the chair, the sofa, the furniture to support you. But sit up as straight as you can and put your shoulders back, open up your rib cage, and take initially 3 or 4 nice, slow, deep breaths. Big, full breathing in through the nose. And as you exhale, go beyond where you'd normally stop, all the way out. Pause for a second, and then inhale. Do that a few times. As you begin to create and sense, especially as you exhale, a feeling of letting go. Muscles relaxing and unwinding, as if you're becoming a Raggedy Ann doll, just sort of balanced perfectly, right? The head on the neck and the shoulders, above the torso, vertical spine through the hips, all the way down, feeling the floor beneath your feet. Think of yourself as electrically grounded and connected to the earth that supports you, even through the furniture or the pillow that you may be sitting upon. Feel supported from beneath so that you can really let go. Soften like butter on a warm day. Feel yourself yielding to this feeling of safety and deep peace as a place to begin our simple review of how to manage and how to deal with difficult people.
So let's begin by laying the groundwork for this all to take place. And imagine yourself as someone who deals with people, in any case, extraordinarily well. And as far as you can tell, you're really, really clear. Easy people, difficult people, you do so without fear. When you're facing angry, hostile people, you stay safe. When you're dealing with negative and pessimistic people, you find a way to agree. And when you're dealing with sad and depressed people, you get them to stop thinking about me and think about someone else that they can help, some service they can be. Imagine yourself, in each case, coming up face to face with an angry person or a negative person or somebody who's sad and depressed. And in any of those cases, imagine you do your very best. You are clear, free of fear, and able to do whatever you need to do to make it work for them and you. Imagine feeling successful in dealing with the most difficult people around. Imagine, no matter who it is, you're able to stand your ground. Imagine being really good whenever you face the test of dealing with the most difficult people. You always do your best.
Emotional feelings are intoxicating. Positive feelings, joy, happiness, bliss, peace of mind, all the positive feelings have a good kind of intoxication. It's like being a good drunk, happy, friendly, jovial. But the negative emotional feelings, the ones that hurt in your body, almost like a physical pain, sometimes a pain that's more intractable even, and you could say hurts more than a physical pain. Those negative feelings are intoxicating too. And so like a person that's really drunk, it's not likely that they're going to reflect on how drunk they are. Part of being drunk is you don't really realize that you're drunk. You don't know you're drunk. You don't even care. And so it is with your own emotional hurt, whether it's anger or your pessimism and negativity, even if it comes in little bits and spurts, on rare occasions, look at it. And the sadness, even depression that all of us go through from time to time, ideally for short periods, how could we move more elegantly and gracefully through this negativity? Step one is to be aware of it. What's the benefit of an exercise like this? It's a conscious, deliberate, daily routine. Just like your personal hygiene, washing your face, showering, brushing your teeth. Once a day, you set aside a few minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, or maybe several times throughout the day for just a couple of minutes. And you reflect on how you feel. How negative are you today? What's the attitude, the general thread that's running through your emotions in the last few hours? To be aware of that is the first step. And then, of course, to manage your own feelings would be part two. Today's title, Dealing with Difficult People, is about 3 and 4. It's about empathy. If you've done the first two, self-awareness and self-management, you can now move to dealing with difficult people. You can empathize because you're pulling on your own experience. This is called social awareness. You can refuse to be afraid of angry people. You can acknowledge some point in the litany of negativity you get from the pessimist. You can teach a sad or depressed person to help other people and see how wonderful it makes them feel, provided you've done that work with yourself, for yourself. The self you find in paradise. And these are the 4 steps of dealing with difficult people: self-awareness and self-management, like physician, heal thyself. And then 3 is social awareness or empathy. And finally, relationship management. And here's 3 examples. What do I do when people are angry? It scares me. When they're so negative, it seems to drain my energy like they're vampires or something. And depression sort of does the same thing. I tend to pick up these feelings as if they're not only intoxicating but contagious. Come to this place. Play this program again, or review in your mind the solutions we've offered you. And begin to work on yourself that you might be able to help others at the most basic level to feel unafraid. The poet Rainer Marie Rilke once wrote, "Perhaps everything in us that hurts is actually a small, helpless part of us that is afraid and needs comforting." If you approach negative feelings, whether they're yours or those of other people, as if it's all fear resulting from something they just don't understand, and you can help them feel safe, that's a quality of love that in many ways stands equal to and shoulder with the exquisite nature of romantic love, or the love of nature, or the love of music. To love other people, even if you don't like them, to learn to be really interested in them and to care about them and understand them and take the part you don't like and learn to forgive them, have some compassion, in other words, like you. Everyone else in this world is having a tough time of it from time to time. We all go through hurt and loss and sadness. We're all pessimistic at times, and everybody knows anger. But we can become more and more mature and then become those who teach that to other people, who provide it to other people, that show them how they can heal their hurt with that quality of love that is awareness or understanding.
So imagine yourself being really, really good at dealing with other folks. And you can handle the insults and you can handle the pokes. And you can be clear and stand without fear when someone's hostile around you. You can be clear and stand without fear and do what you need to do. And when someone's negative and pessimistic, you can find a way to agree and diffuse all that negativity, all that energy. And when someone's sad or lonely, feeling low down or depressed, well, you can help them get out of themselves and do something that feels real blessed by helping somebody else. And what they'll find is by getting their thoughts out of their own mind, the spiral down will go away and they'll feel better right away. So imagine yourself being really good at dealing with people who are sad. Imagine yourself being really good at dealing with people who are mad. Imagine yourself being really good at people who are putting everything down, and you can stand above it all. You can have higher ground. Imagine yourself being really great at dealing with other people. Imagine yourself being really great. Feel it. Make it real. It has the power to heal. And next time you find yourself facing difficult folks who are getting you with their negativity or insults or their pokes, you can stand tall and you can stand clear above it all and free of fear.
Bring to mind the room in which you sit. Remember what you'll see in just a few moments when we ask you to open your eyes and be wide awake with a full memory of what you've just done and a deep understanding of the benefits of returning to this place of perfect peace, this paradise where you can understand yourself and be better at helping other people. And take a nice, slow, deep breath, inhaling through the nose. Fill your lungs. Hold as you peak. Now as you exhale, relax and open your eyes wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine, alert, rested, refreshed, even better than before.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating study of human psychology when you take a look at the most difficult people. You know, most of psychology for most of history dealt with the difficult people. The whole field of positive psychology is a pretty recent innovation, actually. But we do know a lot about dealing with how difficult people's minds work and how hard it is to be around people like that. But remember, there's just a few little tricks that are really very helpful, and mostly it's about standing your ground and staying out of fear. Because when you're afraid and hurt underneath, and you have a tendency to fall into their trap of being angry or being negative. You know, it's the power of choice. You have a choice to stand clear of all that negativity, not to fight it, but rather to embrace the fact that underneath there is some hurt, and there's a fellow human being over there that's hurting, and I think when we can replace the defensiveness with some kind of empathy, then everything works out much better.
Thanks for being with us today. Be sure and use the Share One with a Friend gadget at focusedpassion.com. Join us next week for the Internet's premier personal empowerment audio series. And as always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui, Hawaii.